Most people wake up every morning and immediately remember who they were yesterday. They remember their problems, their limitations, their failures, and they unconsciously step right back into the same version of themselves. They carry the same thoughts, the same feelings, and the same behaviors into a new day and then wonder why nothing changes. But what if I told you that the moment you truly decide to love yourself, not in a surface level way, but in a way that honors your worth, your potential, and your future, you begin to shift everything? Because loving yourself isn't just about feeling good, it's about creating a new identity, one that no longer accepts mediocrity, one that demands growth, one that levels up. The truth is, when you fall in love with who you are becoming, you naturally break free from the old patterns that kept you stuck, and you step into the possibility of the life you were meant to live. When we talk about self love, most people think it's simply about being kind to yourself, treating yourself well, or repeating affirmations in the mirror. But true self love goes much deeper than that. It is the foundation of transformation, the ground upon which every change in your life is built. Without it, you may try to grow, you may attempt to change, you may set goals and pursue dreams, but those efforts will always be shaky, inconsistent, or short lived because you're building on unstable soil. Transformation doesn't truly begin until you recognize your own worth, until you decide that you are deserving of more, until you accept that your life will only rise to the level that you believe you are worthy of experiencing. Think about it this way: everything in your life is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. If you don't believe you're enough, you will always look for validation from others, always seek approval, always compare yourself, and always settle for less. If you don't honor your value, you will tolerate toxic environments, harmful relationships, unfulfilling jobs, and habits that keep you small. On the other hand, when you learn to love yourself at a core level, not in a conditional way, but in an unconditional way, your choices begin to align with your potential. You stop entertaining people and situations that drain you. You stop betraying yourself for temporary comfort. You stop playing the role of who others expect you to be, and you begin living as who you are truly meant to be. Self love is not arrogance, it's not ego, and it's not selfishness. It is the recognition that you are worthy of living a life that lights you up, a life that reflects your values, your dreams, your uniqueness. When you stand in that recognition, you make decisions from a higher state of being. You no longer sabotage your growth because you finally believe you deserve the results. You no longer chase things to fill a void because you are no longer operating from lack. You begin to move from fullness, from wholeness, and that is where transformation begins. Science even backs this up. Your thoughts and emotions create a chemical signature in your body. When you think thoughts of unworthiness, when you replay memories of failure, when you constantly focus on what's wrong with you, your brain produces the same chemical responses that keep you in stress, fear, and survival mode. And in that state, you can't create anything new, you can't evolve, because your energy is tied up in just surviving. But the moment you choose to think and feel differently about yourself, the moment you generate emotions of love, gratitude, compassion, and worthiness, your body responds. You release different chemicals, your nervous system calms, your heart opens, and you shift from survival into creation. That's where possibilities emerge. That's where growth happens. When you truly love yourself, you allow yourself to dream bigger. You no longer see challenges as reasons to quit, but as opportunities to rise. You stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and instead start asking, "What else am I capable of?" That small shift changes everything. Because the truth is, no one will believe in you until you believe in yourself. No opportunity will fully unfold until you recognize you are capable of handling it. No transformation will sustain until it is grounded in a love for who you are and who you are becoming. So, loving yourself is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It is the very first step toward any meaningful change in your life. You cannot change your body if you hate it, because hate creates resistance. You cannot change your circumstances if you believe you don't deserve better, because your beliefs create your boundaries. You cannot create a new future while holding on to an old identity filled with shame, guilt, or self criticism, because that old energy will keep pulling you back. Self love dissolves those limitations. It opens the door to transformation by telling your mind, your body, and your spirit that you are worthy of something new, something better, something greater than what you've known. When you decide to love yourself enough to change, you begin to unlock discipline, resilience, and focus. You no longer view habits like exercise, meditation, or learning as chores, but as acts of self-respect. You stop procrastinating on your goals because you no longer see them as impossible, you see them as extensions of your self-worth. You begin to align your daily actions with your highest vision, because love for yourself won't allow you to settle for mediocrity. That's why self-love is the foundation of transformation. It creates the conditions, the mindset, and the emotional state from which real change is not only possible, but inevitable. Your thoughts and emotions are not just fleeting experiences that pass through your mind and body, they are powerful forces that shape the reality you live in. Every thought you think produces a chemical reaction in your brain, and that reaction creates a corresponding emotion in your body. When you repeatedly think the same thoughts, you repeatedly produce the same emotions, and over time, those emotions become your state of being. That state of being is what creates the lens through which you perceive life, the energy you emit, and the experiences you attract. So when we say your thoughts and emotions create your reality, it is not just a metaphor, it is a truth that plays out in your biology, in your psychology, and in your external circumstances. Most people wake up in the morning and instantly revisit their past. They remember their problems, their failures, their frustrations, and immediately begin thinking the same thoughts as yesterday. Those familiar thoughts produce familiar emotions: stress, worry, doubt, fear, unworthiness, and suddenly, before the day even begins, they are already living in the past. And because the body has memorized these emotions, it becomes addicted to them, craving them like a drug. This is why it feels so difficult to change. Your body is more committed to the emotions of the past than to the possibilities of the future. And yet, if you continue to live that way, you will only recycle the same experiences again and again, because nothing new can come from the same state of mind and heart. To truly create a new reality, you have to elevate your inner state. You have to generate thoughts that are greater than your current circumstances, and you must feel emotions that match the life you want to create, not the life you are trying to escape. When you think thoughts of possibility, gratitude, courage, abundance, and love, your body responds by releasing new chemicals, signaling new genes, and creating a new internal environment. That shift in chemistry communicates to every cell in your body that change is happening. Suddenly, your energy begins to match the reality you desire, and as you hold that state, your external world begins to reorganize to reflect it. This is why people who carry gratitude seem to attract more opportunities. Gratitude is not just a nice feeling, it is a signal to the body and mind that says, I already have it. When you live in that state, your body doesn't know the difference between what's happening in your imagination and what's happening in your external environment. It begins to prepare for that future as though it is already here. The same is true with love, confidence, and joy. The more you feel them within, the more you magnetize experiences that match those feelings without. But the opposite is also true. If you dwell on lack, you will attract more situations that affirm that lack. If you live in fear, your body will stay in a state of survival, and your environment will keep giving you reasons to remain fearful. This is not punishment, it is alignment. The external world is always reflecting your internal world, and if you want something new, you must become something new in thought and emotion first. The process requires awareness. You have to observe your thoughts, notice your habitual emotions, and decide which ones serve the life you want to live and which ones don't. This isn't easy because the mind likes to run on autopilot and the body likes to cling to what it knows. But every time you catch yourself thinking in a limited way and you choose to think greater, you are rewiring your brain. Every time you feel the pull of an old emotion like doubt or guilt and instead generate a feeling of worthiness or courage, you are retraining your body. With practice, those new thoughts and emotions stop being a conscious effort and start becoming your new baseline. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you establish a new baseline, your external world can't help but shift. People respond to you differently because your energy is different. Opportunities show up because your frequency matches them. Solutions appear where before you only saw problems because your mind is now tuned to possibility. You no longer need to push so hard against life because life begins to flow with you, not against you. This is the direct result of aligning your thoughts and emotions with the reality you desire instead of the reality you fear. The most powerful tool you have is the ability to choose what you think and feel in this moment. You don't need to wait for your external circumstances to change before you feel better, because waiting keeps you stuck. You can decide right now to think and feel in alignment with the future you want to create. That decision, repeated daily, is what builds momentum. That practice, sustained over time, is what rewires your brain and reconditions your body. And that shift is what makes the unseen visible, what makes the imagined real, and what transforms your life from the inside out. Breaking old patterns requires more than just desire, it requires a complete shift in identity. Most people attempt to change by adjusting behaviors on the surface, setting new goals, trying new habits, or forcing themselves into temporary discipline. But underneath all those actions lies the same identity, the same self-image, the same inner story. If that foundation doesn't shift, the old patterns will eventually pull them back, because the subconscious mind will always work to stay consistent with who you believe yourself to be. You cannot truly level up while staying loyal to the version of you that keeps you small. Transformation means creating a new self, one that is no longer chained to the past. Your patterns are simply the result of repeated thoughts, emotions, and actions. The brain learns by repetition, and the body learns by experience. When you think the same thoughts every day, feel the same emotions tied to those thoughts, and behave in the same way, you are teaching your body and mind to operate in a predictable cycle. That predictability feels safe, even if it's destructive, because it's familiar. This is why people stay in unhealthy relationships, cling to unfulfilling jobs, or repeat self-sabotaging habits. The identity attached to those patterns whispers, "This is who I am, this is all I know." And unless you interrupt that cycle, you keep reliving the same reality with only minor variations. To break free, you must step into unfamiliar territory. You must begin to imagine yourself as someone you've never been before, someone who no longer defines themselves by the wounds of the past, someone who no longer makes choices from fear or unworthiness, but from vision and possibility. This is where change begins, not in the behavior first, but in the self-image that drives the behavior. When you no longer identify as a victim, you stop acting like one. When you no longer identify as someone weak or incapable, you stop choosing actions that reinforce that belief. A new identity creates new choices, and new choices create new patterns. It takes awareness to see the patterns clearly. You have to recognize the triggers, the stories, and the beliefs that keep you locked in repetition. Many of them are unconscious, passed down from childhood, or absorbed from society, running silently in the background of your mind. For example, if you were taught that success is not for people like you, every time an opportunity arises, you will unconsciously sabotage it, not because you don't want it, but because it conflicts with your identity. If you grew up believing love must be earned, you will repeat relationships where you overgive and undervalue yourself because it feels familiar. Becoming conscious of these hidden programs is the first step, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. Once you recognize the pattern, the next step is to disrupt it. This means doing something different in the moment where you would usually repeat the old behavior. So if your identity tells you to stay quiet and small, you choose to speak up. If your old self-image says you'll never stick to discipline, you choose to follow through anyway. Every time you act against the old pattern, you weaken the neural pathways that supported it and strengthen the pathways of the new self. This is not easy because the body resists. The familiar emotions of fear, doubt, and discomfort will rise up, trying to drag you back into the old cycle. But those moments are the doorway to transformation. When you persist through the resistance, you prove to yourself that you are no longer that old version. Visualization can be a powerful tool in this process. By mentally rehearsing a new version of yourself, seeing it, feeling it, embodying it, you begin to train your brain and body ahead of the experience. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. When you consistently see yourself as disciplined, worthy, confident, and capable, you condition your mind to believe that identity, and your actions start to align with it naturally. This is why athletes visualize success, why leaders rehearse outcomes in their mind, why creators dream their vision into being before it physically exists. Identity is formed in the imagination before it manifests in reality. Breaking patterns is also about letting go of the emotional addictions tied to your past self. The body becomes conditioned to feelings of guilt, shame, anger, or inadequacy, and it craves them like any drug. So, even when nothing is wrong, you may find yourself replaying painful memories or imagining worst case scenarios just to generate those familiar emotions. To break free, you must replace those feelings with new ones. Generating emotions like gratitude, joy, and empowerment retrains the body to prefer those states. At first, it feels unnatural, even uncomfortable, but with repetition, it becomes your new baseline. Breaking patterns is about courage, the courage to step into the unknown and trust that the unfamiliar future is more rewarding than the familiar past. It requires you to stop being loyal to your old limitations and instead commit to the vision of who you are becoming. Each time you choose that vision over the pull of the past, you create evidence for your new identity. And the more evidence you gather, the stronger the new self becomes until eventually the old patterns lose their power. Loving yourself means setting higher standards, not in a way that comes from judgment or perfectionism, but from a place of knowing your worth and refusing to settle for anything that diminishes it. Too often, people confuse self-love with self-indulgence or with being content in any situation, but true self-love is not about lowering the bar just to make life easier. It is about raising the bar so that every choice, every relationship, every opportunity reflects the respect you have for yourself. When you love yourself deeply, you begin to see where in your life you've been accepting less than you deserve, where you've been making excuses, and where you've been compromising your potential just to stay comfortable. Setting higher standards is the natural expression of honoring yourself. Standards shape everything you experience. They determine the quality of your relationships, the level of your health, the success you attract, and even the peace you carry within. If you tolerate disrespect, you'll continually be surrounded by people who take advantage of you. If you tolerate procrastination, you'll continually feel stuck and frustrated. If you tolerate mediocrity, life will give you exactly that. The standards you live by are like a signal you broadcast into the world, telling others what you will and will not accept. And here's the truth, the world responds to that signal when you raise your standards. People who can't meet them will naturally fall away, and opportunities aligned with those higher standards will begin to flow toward you. Setting higher standards requires courage because it often means breaking away from the familiar. It might mean saying no to relationships that drain you, even if loneliness feels frightening at first. It might mean leaving environments that no longer support your growth, even if they once felt safe. It might mean pushing yourself to take better care of your body, your mind, and your energy, even when old habits try to pull you back. Love is not passive, it is active, and loving yourself means making choices that demand more of you, not less. There is a misconception that raising your standards makes life harder, but in reality, it makes life richer. At first, it feels uncomfortable to demand more of yourself, to hold yourself accountable, to say no when it would be easier to say yes. But over time, the discomfort gives way to alignment, and alignment is where energy flows effortlessly. For example, when you set a higher standard for health, you may initially struggle with discipline, but soon your body rewards you with vitality and strength that make everything else easier. When you set a higher standard in relationships, you may endure a season of letting go, but soon you attract people who respect, honor, and uplift you, making your journey lighter and more fulfilling. Raising your standards is also about self-respect and the small daily choices. It's easy to declare big goals and set ambitious visions, but true standards reveal themselves in the everyday moments. Do you hit snooze when you promised yourself you would wake up early? Do you eat food that leaves you drained when you committed to fueling your body with energy? Do you allow your time to be wasted on distractions when you promised yourself focus? These small acts may seem insignificant, but each one communicates to yourself what you truly believe you deserve. Every time you follow through on a higher standard, you strengthen your self-respect. Every time you let yourself off the hook, you reinforce the old identity. What makes this powerful is that higher standards not only transform you, but they also ripple outward. When you hold yourself to a higher level of integrity, others around you are inspired to rise. When you demand respect, others learn to offer it not just to you, but also to themselves. When you set the bar higher for what you accept in your life, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. Your life becomes a mirror that reflects possibility, and that influence is one of the greatest gifts of self-love. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or unrealistic. Higher standards are not about perfection, they are about alignment. They are about ensuring that your outer life reflects the love and value you hold within. It is possible to set standards with compassion, to demand more of yourself while still honoring your humanity, to push for growth without falling into self-criticism. That balance is what makes the journey sustainable. Love is patient and kind, but it is also powerful, and when directed inward, it refuses to allow you to remain in environments, relationships, or habits that diminish your light. The truth is, people will only treat you as well as you treat yourself. Life will only rise to the level of the standards you enforce. If you keep tolerating less, you will keep receiving less. But the moment you declare through your actions that you are worthy of more, everything begins to shift. That is the power of loving yourself enough to set higher standards. It transforms not only what you expect from the world, but also what you expect from yourself. The power of the present moment is often underestimated, yet it is the most potent force you have access to. Most people live either in the past or in the future, caught in cycles of regret, guilt and pain from what has already happened, or in anxiety, fear, and anticipation about what might happen next. They replay old stories in their mind, allowing memories of failure or trauma to dictate their identity today, or they project themselves into imagined scenarios that trigger stress before those situations even occur. In both cases, they are missing the only place where transformation can actually occur: the now. The present moment is where all change begins, where all new choices are made, and where all possibilities exist. When you choose to love yourself in this moment, you step out of the chains of the past and the illusions of the future. You stop identifying with the old story that has defined you, the one that keeps telling you who you were, what you lacked, and why you can't move forward. Instead, you recognize that right here and right now, you have the power to create something different. The present is not bound by your history unless you allow it to be. Your past may explain how you got here, but it does not have the authority to decide where you go next unless you hand it that power. By anchoring yourself in the now, you reclaim the ability to make new choices that are no longer dictated by old emotions. This requires awareness because the mind is addicted to the familiar. The body is conditioned to feel what it has always felt, so it tries to drag you back into old patterns by replaying familiar feelings of guilt, shame, unworthiness, or fear. That's why, even when nothing is happening in your external world, you suddenly feel waves of anxiety or sadness. It is not the present moment creating those emotions, it is the past replaying itself in your body. But if you can pause and notice what's happening without automatically reacting, you create space. In that space, you realize that the emotion is not who you are, it is just an old signal, and you don't have to obey it. That awareness allows you to shift, to breathe, and to choose differently. The present moment is also where your creativity lives. You cannot create from the past because the past is already done, and you cannot create from the future because the future only exists in imagination. Creation happens now in the decisions you make and the energy you embody in this very moment. When you bring your full awareness into the present, you begin to access inspiration, clarity, and intuition that were hidden behind the noise of regret and worry. This is why practices like meditation are so powerful. They silence the pull of the past and the future, grounding you into the stillness where new possibilities are born. In that stillness, you can choose thoughts that align with the life you want to live and generate emotions that match the future you desire. Loving yourself in the present moment also means accepting yourself as you are while committing to who you are becoming. Too often, people postpone self-love, telling themselves they will only be worthy once they achieve a certain goal, lose a certain amount of weight, gain a certain level of success, or receive a certain amount of approval. That mindset keeps love forever out of reach because the conditions are always shifting. The truth is, the only time you can decide you are worthy is now. The only time you can choose to honor yourself is now. And when you make that choice, you are no longer chasing love as something external, you are generating it within, and that changes everything. Another aspect of the present moment is its power to collapse time. When you consistently align your energy in the now with the vision of the future you want to create, you begin to experience synchronicities and opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere. This isn't coincidence, it's coherence. Your inner state and your external environment come into alignment, and life begins to deliver situations that match who you are being in the present. That is why people who cultivate gratitude and self love often find themselves lucky. It's not luck, it's the power of their present state magnetizing the right circumstances to them. The present moment also frees you from the burden of control. So much of human suffering comes from trying to manipulate outcomes, trying to force the future, or trying to undo the past. But when you return to the now, you realize you don't have to control everything. All you have to do is choose how you show up right here, right now. Do you choose love or fear? Do you choose courage or doubt? Do you choose action or procrastination? Those choices accumulate, and over time they shape the trajectory of your life. The future is nothing more than the compounded effect of your present moment decisions. When you love yourself enough to be fully present, you stop escaping into stories that limit you. You begin to see each moment as an opportunity to align more deeply with your highest self. Even small choices, a kind thought toward yourself, a conscious breath instead of a reactive outburst, a decision to move your body instead of numbing it, become powerful because they are rooted in awareness. These small present moment actions build momentum, and that momentum becomes transformation. Self-love fuels resilience and expansion because it creates an inner foundation strong enough to withstand challenges and flexible enough to grow beyond them. Life is never without obstacles, setbacks, or moments of uncertainty, and it is in those moments that many people lose momentum. They doubt themselves, question their path, and sometimes give up altogether. But when you have cultivated deep love for yourself, you no longer see challenges as proof of inadequacy, you see them as opportunities to evolve. You stop interpreting failure as a statement about your worth and begin to interpret it as feedback that guides your growth. That shift is what turns struggle into strength and setbacks into stepping stones. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain or pretending difficulties don't exist. It comes from loving yourself enough to believe you are bigger than the challenge in front of you. When you love yourself, you refuse to collapse under pressure because you know your value isn't defined by circumstances. You trust that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to rise again. This kind of self-trust makes you unshakable. It allows you to face uncertainty with courage, to navigate failure with wisdom, and to hold your vision steady even when the external world looks like it's falling apart. Without self-love, adversity breaks you down. With self-love, adversity builds you up. Expansion is the natural result of this resilience. Every time you move through a challenge with self-compassion and determination, you grow into a stronger, wiser version of yourself. You expand your capacity to handle more, to create more, to receive more. Think of it like a muscle. The more resistance you encounter, the stronger you become, but only if you approach that resistance with the right mindset. Without self-love, resistance feels like punishment. With self-love, resistance feels like training. You welcome it because you know it's shaping you into someone capable of living at a higher level. Self-love also prevents you from abandoning yourself in difficult times. Many people turn against themselves when life gets hard, filling their minds with criticism, blame, or shame. They make the challenge heavier by carrying self-judgment on top of it. But when you love yourself, you refuse to add unnecessary weight. You remind yourself that struggle is part of growth, that failure is not final, and that you are worthy of patience and compassion even when things don't go according to plan. This kindness toward yourself is what keeps you moving when others quit. It sustains your energy and keeps your focus on progress rather than perfection. Expansion requires you to step outside of your comfort zone, and comfort zones are rarely easy to leave. They feel safe because they are familiar, but they also keep you confined. To expand means to stretch into the unknown, to embrace new experiences, to take risks that once felt intimidating. Without self-love, you interpret the discomfort of growth as danger and retreat back into old patterns. But with self-love, you interpret that same discomfort as a sign of transformation. You lean into the unknown because you trust yourself to handle whatever arises. This trust is the gateway to expansion. It allows you to explore new possibilities, to express more of your potential, and to experience life in fuller dimensions. Another way self-love fuels resilience and expansion is by creating alignment between your inner world and your outer actions. When you love yourself, you no longer tolerate habits, environments, or relationships that drain you. You begin to align your life with your values, your vision, and your highest standards. This alignment makes you more resilient because you're not fighting against yourself anymore. Your energy isn't wasted on people or situations that don't serve you. Instead, you channel that energy into growth. And as you stay aligned, opportunities that match your energy begin to show up, pulling you into expansion naturally. There's also an energetic component to self-love. When you generate emotions of worthiness, compassion, and confidence, you create coherence between your heart and mind. That coherence is not just a feeling, it's a measurable state that strengthens your immune system, stabilizes your nervous system, and enhances your creativity and problem solving. In other words, loving yourself doesn't just feel good, it literally equips your body and mind to handle stress more effectively. This biological resilience supports your ability to expand into new possibilities because you are no longer bogged down by survival mode. You are free to create rather than just react. Self-love is also what keeps you consistent. Expansion doesn't happen overnight, it happens through repeated choices, small actions, and sustained effort. Without self-love, it's easy to quit when the results don't come fast enough or when progress feels invisible. But when you love yourself, you no longer tie your worth to immediate outcomes. You understand that growth is a process, and you honor yourself through that process. This patience allows you to stay the course long enough to experience the breakthroughs that others never reach. When challenges arise, self-love whispers you are enough and you can move through this. When opportunities arise, self-love says you are worthy of receiving this, don't shrink back. It is both the anchor and the anchor that keeps you steady in storms and the fuel that propels you forward into greater expansion. This is why resilience and expansion are not separate from self-love, they are born from it.